Hey there, what's up everybody? It is Friday, it is YouTube day. I am Choppadong. I am lead content editor at DFSArmy.com, senior contributor and coach, and I'm here to break down the MLB slate, the Express slate, the 8 p.m. slate tonight, 4 games, the fastest you've ever seen it done. Why? Because when you have the content tools and coaching to formulate a process that puts you on a winning track, you can cut out all the fluff. You can get in, get out, get your lists up, get your player pools up, and then start building lineups with confidence that these are plays that should most times succeed. So let's dive in. Obviously, as always, like and subscribe to the video. Head down there to the comments section and click the notifications tab so that you get notifications that drop when videos drop to your phone. Of course, DFSArmy.com is the link down there in the comments section that you want to click to join and become a member of the winning community, DFSArmy.com. Use coupon code CHOP, CHOP, triggers 20% off each month you stay a member. Diving into the research station, it's all we're going to hit today. We start on the pitchers tab right here. Grade is already sorted out. If you've seen on the other videos, the Domination Station Optimizer sorts by grade now. It also sorts by projections only, and then it sorts by hybrid, which blends the two together. We've had some decent success with it the first few days of the week that we've been running it. But I take my pitchers into consideration first. So let's pick our pitchers really quickly here. I look at K-score. It's pretty much already in order. It's already sorted for us by DFSA grade and K-score. Always a good sign when those two line up. If I look at your Quiddy, I'm going to say it's a small sample size. But I am also going to say that the St. Louis Cardinals, we'll just scroll back over here, I'm going to say the St. Louis Cardinals typically don't handle pitchers that they haven't seen before very well. It's a hitting approach thing. Now, that said, they're red hot right now, so it's not exactly like we can predict which way this one's going to go one way or the other. I wouldn't be surprised to see St. Louis score 4 or 5 runs tonight. I wouldn't be surprised to see them get completely dominated by your Quiddy. So I wouldn't consider him necessarily my cash game option on this slate. I would definitely consider him an option, though, because, again, St. Louis can be prone to having never seen a guy before and not having video on him. As a team, they rely a little bit too much on video, in my opinion. Pineda would be another one as an option. He's sitting at, 8,800, definitely affordable. We don't mind targeting the Chicago White Sox as an offense because they just typically don't do a lot of damage. He's got a 479 K-score, which is up there pretty high. Not the highest in the world, but it's up there pretty high. He's got a decent bullpen backing him up, and he's a minus 160 favorite out of Vegas. So, to be quite honest with you, he is about the surest thing that we have tonight. If you don't feel comfortable with him, by all means, take a shot on somebody else. But in terms of floor and upside, and the fact that we've got some offenses like St. Louis and Flaherty facing Houston, don't know that I want to attack the Houston Astros. Sitting in Miller Park with Hendricks and in any of the Gio Gonzalez or whatever types facing an offense that can hit the ball out of the yard. Don't really think that that's a smart place to necessarily go. You're gambling if you run into those subpar situations. About the best you have is Pineda, the minus 160 coming out of Vegas, sitting in Chicago White Sox ballpark facing a weaker offense. And he's got decent strikeout upside, not great. If this was a larger slate, we would talk about other pitchers. But being that this is just an 8-pitcher slate, this is the best that we have to work for in terms of safety, cash, and upside for your cash games or even some of your tournaments. Now, I'm not going to run him all in. I'm not going to be, if I build 3 or 4 lineups, I'm not going to maybe put him in all 3 or 4 necessarily. I'll probably take a shot on somebody else, but he's going to be in the bulk of them, okay? Moving on to finding the bad pitchers, because that's typically what we want to do is find some stacks of bad pitchers against. We'll slide over here. In this pitcher stat section, I'm looking for pink and red. And, usually you're going to find down here on the bottom, I think we can all agree that scrolling this line right here is pretty red, pretty pink, pretty bad. This one here, probably the same with a 5.18 Sierra. So Plesac and Cease are going to be pitchers that we're going to tend to attack. Gio Gonzalez isn't looking very good either, and even Jacob Junis, although he's got a little bit of upside some nights, he's not looking really, really good tonight either. Now, most of your green here in Hendricks, a little bit more green here in Flaherty, some pinks and stuff popping in on Pineda and Urquidy, of course. It doesn't change my mind about making those guys the pitchers that I want to use as my pitcher. It does keep me away from them with bats, so to speak. Now, again, GPP, you want to take a shot on your Urquidy with how hot St. Louis is, by all means, go do it. But generally speaking, I'm going to be picking on these pitchers down here at the bottom, these bottom 3 or 4 pitchers. So when I scroll back over, I'm looking at Minnesota, Kansas City, Chicago, and Cleveland. Those would be the stacks that I would prioritize around tonight. Can I find some value in there? Of course, Kansas City is going to be pretty cheap, so I can build around some Kansas City for value. Not that I need a ton of it with an $8,800 pitcher in Pineda, but it does always help to know where that value is going to come from. So I'm looking at those 4 stacks. Now, I won't mind taking some Milwaukee or some Houston. Probably won't touch Chicago, the White Sox, although on a short slate, if you can find a big tournament, it never hurts to stack against the chalk, which would probably be Pineda, because strange things happen, and with the 3 or 4 game slate, there's really no other option people can run to. So if Chicago does damage Minnesota tonight, then you're kind of sitting there off all on your own. That's more of a contrarian GPP type of tip. I don't use it much on hybrid lineups and cash games and league play and stuff like that, but I do use it in tournament play when I can find a decent tournament that I want to attack that has enough people in it that it will pay me off for the risk that I'm taking. I'm not talking about beating 100 people. I'm talking about beating 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people. You might consider that in that scenario. We've got our bottom 4 pitchers here. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to dig into those stacks a little bit and see in those bats which ones are going to pop. So I go back to today's batting matchups. I sort by starting pitcher ISO. I cut down to just the 2 games, or the 2 times for the 4 game slate. And now I'm going to scroll down to starting pitcher ISO. What kind of power does this pitcher allow against himself? Is he giving up the long ball? A 243 ISO against is pretty big. Over 200 is what I would look for. So now that I've found pitchers that are giving up some, power against, what bats in those lineups are doing the damage? Nelson Cruz, Mitch Garver, Miguel Sano, all over 200 ISO themselves. We would call this 200 on 200. And it's an indicator of a power matchup. Byron Buxton's close. Scope is over 200, so 4 bats, possibly a 5th in the Minnesota. Minnesota should hit some home runs tonight. Now, that's not front page news. They lead the league in home runs. But it's telling you that they're sitting in a situation tonight where the right-handed bats definitely are in a good spot, the right-handed power bats, because this right-handed pitcher also struggles against right-handed bats. So we got kind of a dual green light tonight. When I scroll down a little bit more here, I find righties against Plesac, and I find a 241 and a 244. That's Dozier and Soler out in Kansas City. The other bats are not necessarily hitting for a lot of power. Doesn't mean you can't run into one. It means the odds are not with them. The odds, if a home run or 2 are going to happen in the game, odds are Dozier or Soler is behind the bat doing the damage because they've proven they can hit that handedness hard, and this pitcher struggles against their handedness. 234 ISO against. There's not much to love down here in the St. Louis lefty offense. Not a lot of power in there, so I probably would not be hunting home runs on that side of the plate. Scroll down a little bit more, I can start finding some one-offs. The 223 or 212 Jose Abreu in Chicago. If I wanted to take a Chicago White Sox player, I'd get lower ownership on an Abreu. He wouldn't be bad as a one-off. I wouldn't necessarily go stacking the offense up, but as a one-off, not terrible. Down here a little bit lower, 207 and a 257, Duda and O'Hearn. If they find their way into the Kansas City offense, that gives us 4 Kansas City bats. Dozier, Soler, Duda, O'Hearn. Power on power, right? Scroll down a little bit more. 255, Jose Ramirez in Cleveland. Nice little one-off. Nobody else is really doing a lot of damage against the pitching that is offered up tonight. Scroll down a little bit more, and now we're getting into below the 200 where these pitchers are not necessarily struggling to give up power against, but a 240 is something worth looking at. There's Lindor and Carlos Santana waiting in the wings. These are the types of one-offs that I would look for. Your Abreu's, your Ramirez's, your Lindor's, your Santanas, whatever. I might not be stacking that offense tonight because it's not necessarily something that I'm targeting. Although Jacob Junis is a pitcher that I don't mind targeting, so if you wanted to run a Cleveland stack, I'm not completely against it. I would just use the bats most likely to do the heavy damage. The other spot that I stop is in the Trends tab. What I can do here is I can sort by DFSA grade if I want to and just go position by position looking for which players want to land on my list. Out of the L7 WOBA category, last 7 days WOBA, who's hitting hot? Anything over about a 370, 380, something like that's fine. Translates to about a 900 OPS. On base plus slug. WOBA is weighted on base average. They tell you largely the same stuff. So if I sort that out and kick everyone off the list that is not hitting over a 375, then I've only got guys that are seeing the ball well, that are hitting well currently, and then I'm going to look at the DFSA grade. Now you can give me a 93 rating on somebody who's not hitting well, and I'm not necessarily going to take that guy. I would like green light here, green light here. I would like a great matchup, and I would like somebody hitting really, really well. Okay, currently hitting well. So when I sort down by catcher and first base, this is how I'm going to form my player pool, my rough player pool. I'm already looking for stacks in Minnesota, Kansas City, maybe some Cleveland, something like that. I'm already targeting pitchers. I'm going to now kind of round things out. I'm looking at the good numbers here by position. And so Garver, Duda, Castro, maybe Grandal or Goldschmidt. Goldschmidt doesn't have the greatest matchup rating, but he's a 468 but right now he's hot. And he's facing a pitcher that might not be, he doesn't have a large sample size. He might not be necessarily that reliable. He had some numbers that showed a little bit of shakiness, and if Goldschmidt's hot, might not be a bad idea to take a shot at. Now, I think Garver is your best choice tonight, in terms of if you're going to pay up, into the $3,000, almost $4,000 range. I think Garver's your best shot. Now, I would take Goldschmidt maybe on DraftKings where he's 4,500 as opposed to 5,400 for Garver. But I'm going to try and load up Minnesota bats because they also showed that 200 on 200 power situation. But those would be the 3 or 4 bats that I would put in my player pool. Doesn't mean the others are completely off the table. It just means I'm going to try to focus on those 3 or 4 that I showed you. There's only 4 options here. They're all hitting fairly well. They don't have great DFSA grades, but here and Altuve probably where I start. Wong and Goins. Goins is a straight punt at 2,200, 57 DFSA grades. Not a great matchup for him. Hira, however, has a decent matchup. He's just priced up. Altuve as well. So you're probably going to have to pay up at second base tonight. Third base, Jose Ramirez, Hunter Dozier, Miguel Sano. And these are names that you should all know. There's not a lot of value at this position right now. Either according to this method, you can go finding value in other ways. Showing you how to do that in other videos. Shortstop, Lindor, Polanco, Baez, Adrianza, there's some value for you. Happens to be an 80 rating and a 518 WOBA. If he draws the start tonight, over the last week, he's been hot. You might want to run him. Throw him down there with Byron Buxton. You've got yourself some value. Now you probably don't need to worry about much else with an $8,800 pitcher like Pineda. You're probably stacked up. You can run into Cleveland, Minnesota, and pay up for those offenses if you want to. DeYoung had a big day the other day. Obviously, that's pumped up his L7 WOBA, but he does not necessarily have a super strong matchup compared to these 90s up here in Minnesota and Cleveland. I'm going to expand a little bit on the outfielders because there are 3 positions, 3 outfielders per shortstop or per first baseman, whatever. We only get to roster. In some cases, we roster 4 on FanDuel because we end up with a utility spot. Cruz, Yelich, Kepler, Alvarez, Brantley, Nakin, if he gets in there, Nakin, whatever, however you pronounce his name. Buxton, a little bit of a value. Ryan Braun, Martinez in St. Louis, a little bit of a value. We'll see how he's running. 460 on the WOBA, pretty strong at 2,700. Might be a little value, one-off / punt, whatever. If you're not stacking up St. Louis, but you want to run Martinez, that wouldn't be a bad way to go. Munoz also at 2,500 if he gets the start. Lorenzo Cain leading off probably in Milwaukee. These are bats that I would be using. So now I've got a player pool of what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 16, 20, about 30 players. That's enough to build some lineups around. You get some stacks in there. You get some decent players. And what you're focused on is the best DFSA grades with the best recent hot streak hitters in that player pool going for you. That logically makes sense. Baseball does not logically pan out, but if you run this week in and week out, I promise you're going to end up putting together streaks like this where, yeah, sometimes you're 32nd place, 78th place, 80th place. In some cases, yes, 100th place. Dead ass last night, but a 22nd and a 12th place out of 100-man leagues, you're doing okay. You're pretty much, getting in there enough. You're in the top 50, 64% of the time. Should be in 50-50s in that case. Top 30% or, 32 out of the 83 times, 39% of the time. So you're finishing in the top half and top third overwhelmingly often enough to profit from that. So play triple ups, play 50-50s, play those cash games with your league built lineups, the ones that are stacking, the ones that are not just straight cash type lineups where you're playing ultra safe. You're actually taking some risk. You're actually taking the best pitcher you can find, the best offense you can find, and then loading up on its bats. And you're going to end up like tonight. I may run a Cleveland stack, a Minnesota stack, a Kansas City stack, whatever. One of those offenses is going to do pretty well tonight, and that's going to position me to be in the top half, top third, top 20%, maybe top 10%, and maybe even the top 1% of lineups tonight. Done that 4 times in 83 contests. That's about 5% of the time. Well, if I build a 1%, if the playing field was level, 1% of the time I should build a top 1% of the lineup. A top 1% lineup. Well, I've done it 5% of the time, 5 times more often than I should. That tells you that my building method here works. It's over an 83 sample size. It works. You follow my direction, you follow my lead, and I'll put you on players that generally do okay. Are you going to have bad nights? Absolutely. But you're going to have a lot of good nights too. And if you layer the contests through the ladder structure that I show my VIPs, then you are going to build better lineups. You're going to turn into a more profitable player, and you're going to build a bankroll over the long term. That's what I enjoy helping people do. If you like that type of coaching, you like this type of information, you want access to the type of tool that shows you in 10 minutes how to narrow down a player pool, 10 or 15 minutes? That's all the research you need to put into today. Everything else is pure fluff. If you like that style, click the like, click the subscribe button, ring the notification bell so these videos drop to your phone. You can pick it up on your lunch break if you want to. And get in here and start building better lineups. If you want to actually talk with me in a more detailed sense, then we need to become a VIP. We need to jump in here because I don't show these videos every day. I don't go into all of the details and all of the methods that I help people build lineups with. I don't go into all of the sports. That's what your VIP access gets you. So jump on in here today. Let's learn to build a bunch of different sports: NASCAR, MMA, PGA, football, baseball, basketball, whatever. Let's learn them all. And let's do it for one monthly subscription price, one investment in your own game by clicking that link, DFSArmy.com, using the coupon code CHOP because we'll drop it down 20%. Buy in bulk and save. Friends don't let friends pay retail, whatever it is that you want to say. But get on in here today. It's Friday. Let's win this weekend. Let's turn your game around. I'm Chopadong. Hit me up out on Twitter. Hit me up inside our coaching forums at DFSArmy.com. Hopefully I see you inside as a member here real soon. Take care, guys. Have a great weekend.